All right, so just to kick it off, I'll give some little intros. So Rachel is also with Fair Trade Federation and has been doing a lot through them, but has been involved with Fair Trade Philadelphia for quite some time. And Billy has been involved with Fair Trade Philadelphia for about 6 years on their steering committee. And so they've been active in the buying clubs that the campaign has put on, and they have been very successful. And I know we've gotten a lot of questions as fellows, and I'm sure Kylie has gotten some too, just kind of how they've run them, how they've kind of chosen the brands and kind of gone through from there and created something very successful to bring their community together. So we just wanted to create a little workshop. It's not super webinar-y, but kind of something to bring folks together and get some questions answered and see what there is to see. So I'll hand it over to Rachel and Billy.
Cool, thank you, Holly, and welcome everyone. Again, my name is Billy Hannafy and I'm with Fair Trade Philadelphia. When I'm not doing Fair Trade Philadelphia stuff, I work at B Lab doing the B Corp certification. So thoroughly enmeshed in all of the fair trade and sustainability world when it comes to business. And we're really excited to talk to you all today about our Fair Trade Buying Club, and hopefully give some tips and tricks that we've learned, and also, hear some ideas, because we're always looking for ways to kind of improve this. So hopefully we can make this kind of like a collaborative discussion. Rachel and I prepared a presentation just to kind of walk you through the background and how it works. So you have some visual cues, and then afterward, I think we can open it up for discussion and just kind of see what materializes. So Holly, if you could, oh, you already enabled screen sharing, perfect. So I'm going to share my screen and just kind of walk you through what we're doing. So assume everyone can see the screen at this point. Yeah, okay, cool. So this is Fair Trade Philadelphia. You can see we're a pretty active group, and we've had a lot of different members come in and out throughout the years, but we're pretty active in putting on different types of programming events and participating in different community events, and just trying to get people in the Philadelphia area thinking about fair trade and consuming fair trade products. And of course, the Fair Trade Buying Club is one of these core initiatives that we have to get people consuming fair trade products. So what is the Fair Trade Buying Club? It's Fair Trade Philadelphia members and supporters coming together to bulk purchase products from fair trade vendors. So our goals for this program really are threefold. First and foremost, we want to be able to support businesses. So one of the things that we think really strongly about in the Fair Trade Philadelphia community is that the best way to support the fair trade movement is to get people to be fair trade consumers, at least from our end, interacting with people and that kind of thing. So the Fair Trade Buying Club really aims to just literally do that, help people buy fair trade products. Second goal of ours is to promote brands. So there's a lot of different fair trade brands, and it's tough for them to get to market because they're not always carried in traditional retailers. They're not necessarily in the traditional grocery stores that people go to. So it's a way for us to get these brands in front of our community. And certainly we have a great pipeline with Rachel and the Fair Trade Federation, who can help even introduce them to us as an organization. So that's a second goal. And then the third one for us is to fundraise. So we are not a formally registered nonprofit organization, we're not a 501c3, we're not a 501c4. So this is one of the ways that we as an organization can try and raise some money for ourselves to try and fund some of our programming and just give ourselves some organizational funding and capacity. So just a little bit of the origin. The Buying Club was started in 2016 when, at the time, I was running a small business called the Open Life Shop, and similar kind of goals to get people consuming and buying, sustainably made products. And at the time when I was kind of first getting involved with Fair Trade Philadelphia, I thought this partnership could be a unique way to support Fair Trade Philadelphia and also my business at the time. And at the time, what would happen is basically my business would be able to come in and facilitate the whole buying club process, doing all the logistical work, the bureaucratic work, the buying and that kind of thing, aggregating payments, and most importantly, using my registered business license as the broker for purchasing the product. Because some of you might know, typically vendors will only sell to registered entities with tax IDs, with employee identification numbers, EIN numbers, so that there can be a chain of custody for paying taxes. So I was also responsible for remitting taxes on behalf of the buying club too. So that's kind of how it started in 2016, and we'll kind of talk about the fundamentals and kind of what the nature of that partnership looked like. And we pretty much do all of this work in-house now, so we don't have to work with my former business or another business in that capacity. So the fundamentals, basically the philosophy is, again, we try to work with fair trade brands and vendors to negotiate a bulk purchase price. So some of you might be aware, vendors sell to retailers in bulk purchases, in wholesale pricing. So we as a buying club come in as somewhat like a retailer and purchase at a wholesale rate. So what we do is we go to those different brands and vendors, we figure out what the different rates are for these bulk purchases, and try to judge if our group can actually meet those thresholds. The benefit we see for all the parties involved is that, again, these fair trade brands and businesses are earning more revenue for themselves. We get to fundraise as a group. And one of the unique things that we do is pass the discount along to our members. Since we're buying in bulk, we can reduce the price from the traditional retail price. I'll kind of show what that looks like here. So in case you're not familiar, when we go shopping at the store, we see a retail price that we as consumers pay. And what retailers do is they, again, as I was saying before, they go and purchase these products in bulk, maybe 10 units at a time, 50 units at a time, depending on what the vendor requires. But they go out and purchase all of those items in bulk and then mark them up to the retail price so that the retailer can earn that margin. Part of the reason the retailers have to mark up, as you can see here, sometimes 50% higher or even higher in some cases, is because they have to contend with the fact that not every unit purchased might be sold. There might have to be future discounts to kind of move that inventory. So there's a lot less certainty when it comes to doing retail purchasing in this way. So kind of one of the benefits of the Fair Trade Buying Club is that when we come in and we negotiate with these fair trade brands, we're doing the work up front to make sure that we can sell everything that we're going to buy. So unlike a store that, again, might have to purchase 10 or 50 units and they don't know how popular that product is going to be at their store, we've gone to our members and said, hey, are you interested in these products? Do you want to purchase this? And we've gotten commitments from everyone before we make the purchase. So what that enables us to do is, as you can see, we can go in and purchase the products at the bulk rate. And then we can add a little bit of a margin for ourselves, since we know that we're going to sell every single product before we even purchase it. And then we can pass a little bit of that discount to our members so that the members get to enjoy a discount and, again, encourage them to be consuming fair trade products. So that's really kind of the model. And this is how, Groupon and other typical, group buying types of formats work. So it's not necessarily a new model, but it's just something we wanted to bring to the fair trade market and get our fair trade members to start kind of consuming in this way. So I'm going to pass it to Rachel really quickly, and she's going to walk through this process and talk about how we actually do this.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here with everyone and talk about this. So first, on the next slide, you'll see a quick overview of our process. If you could go to that one, great. So I'll go through each of these steps. And recently, one thing that we've done, and as you've kind of heard Billy go into already, is over time, we've really honed this as we've done multiple rounds now and improved, I would say improved a bit each time as we go. So one thing that we've done in the recent past is getting volunteers to help with kind of one or two of each of these steps so that it is not kind of all on one or two people. And Billy and Yoko are here with us today, and Yoko is also from Fairtrade Philadelphia, and I believe you both were kind of very instrumental in the starting of this. So I think you two did a lot of it at first, if that's correct. So yeah, but let's get into the different steps. So for the next slide, this first step, we work with our members to identify and target brands and products that folks would be interested in. So the way we do this is we tend to talk to each other about products that we like and tend to purchase, and also vendors that we like. And another point, and what we've done recently is, working specifically with vendors who have supported our group, whether partnering with us through an event or if they're a local business or if they've engaged with us in some way. So that's kind of a good starting point there. And so once we have kind of determined the interests of the group, we then go out to the brand or vendor to talk about some of the feasibility of if we would be able to place a minimum order. So we'll ask for items like the wholesale price, minimum order quantities, product availability, and lead and delivery times so that we can plan accordingly for how long the whole process will take. And we'll get into it with some examples of how this is kind of played out as well. So for the next step, we create a form. It's typically a Google form, but sometimes we've used Excel too, where we list the product options and the pricing information and requirements. And the deadline, we normally give folks a deadline to get back to us so that we can determine, how many folks are interested in and what they're interested in specifically. And, one thing that we've kind of found is when we've offered a ton of products, it's been a little bit trickier. So we've tried to narrow it down. The past few that we've done have been less products so that it's easier for us to hit those product minimums that Billy was talking about. So for example, for like food and drink and the spices that are pictured here, we were buying them by the case. So we needed to make sure that we had enough folks interested in it for those amounts. And once we have the form set, we share that through our network, which is our newsletter, on social media. We also have a Fairtrade Philadelphia Slack where we do a lot of our organizing, and then also at virtual and in-person events when we were having in-person events. So hopefully those will be coming back very soon. Great. And then, so once we have received all of the responses by that deadline, we go in to check and see if we've received enough orders to qualify for the bulk purchase. Also, if we're close, we've gone out to some of our more active and like core members to see if we can fill in any gaps to make it work. So sometimes there's a little bit of a dance that we're doing there to see if we can move forward. And then we also have a mention that when we're promoting our buying club, that if we happen to not be able to reach those minimums, that we may have to cancel or postpone it. But Billy, has that happened? I'm not sure that it has.
We do have that. Well, I guess we will share with the 5 North, but we do have some examples of that for sure. Yeah,
a little bit, but for the most part, we've been able to kind of make it work. And I do think, we've been trying to get more and more folks involved in this, but typically it's been a fairly small group. So that has definitely made it a bit easier too as we go. So yeah, so once we reach that threshold and we've determined that we can move forward with it, we email the participants to summarize their order and to tell them what the cost will be. And we typically take payment in the form of cash, personal check, and Venmo. And we also ask for it before placing the order so that, you know, we're not stuck with product that people then don't come to pick up and pay for. Although there is a bit of trust too. So if it's someone that's like, you know, we know really well, we'll work with them. And one thing to note is at this stage, once people have done and signed up through the form and we email them, we have oftentimes lost like 1 or 2 people along the way that for some reason are no longer interested. And so that's something to keep in mind, and kind of there may be some other hiccups like, you know, products selling out, that sort of thing. So, but since, as I mentioned, since it's typically a small group, we've been able to work through those as we go. And then we place the order and the products are shipped to one of the Fairtrade Philadelphia volunteers. So, and the volunteer then, most of the time that's Yoko, who's on here today, so we thank her for that, has been the one that divides up the individual orders from the bulk order that we receive, and then it's distributed. We have done that in a few different ways. Before pre-COVID, you know, there would be like a product party or at one of our events where they could bring the products and pick it up there. We've also done some central pickup locations at folks' apartments who have offered. We've done, I think, typically 2 in different areas of the city so that folks can pick it up nearby. We've also offered post office shipping. That is an extra charge that we add on for that. And then we have a nice picture here of one of our steering committee members, Brian, who offered to do a few local deliveries too within his neighborhood. So if you can get folks to volunteer to do that, that's really nice for encouraging participation as well. Great, so now I think I'll kick it back over to Billy to talk about a few of the buying clubs we've done, and then I'll join in on that too.
Cool, thanks, Rachel. So yeah, so looking back, one of the first ones we did was with Marketplace Handwork of India, which I'm sure many of the Chicago Fair Trade members are familiar with. So we worked with them a couple times. And here you can kind of see like a sample flyer that we sent out to the organization that talks about the process and the terms and the discount and that kind of thing. I remember one time when we did this, Yoko also reached out to one of her hula dance groups, which was another way to kind of, you know, find a targeted audience where people are collectively, gathering. That was a really convenient way to kind of help buttress the minimum requirements that we needed. So you can imagine like at a hula group, if everyone's kind of buying something and then we can just bring all the product when it came in at the time to the hula class, then everyone could kind of get it at the same time. It also creates that feedback loop of everyone getting the product together and, you know, enjoying it together, getting to talk about it together. So that was really cool. A little bit limited because it's mostly, actually I think almost exclusively women's apparel. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily as inclusive as it could be for all the members, but even judging by this call today, I think, you know, the audience for a lot of these products are still mostly women. So, you know, finding the products that work for your group, you know, is certainly good. And in this case, the Marketplace products were really great. So we definitely did them a couple times and that was positive. Socks, Maggie's. This was another really great one we did and much more inclusive. I can't remember. We did it in 2018, looks like. And this was a pretty intensive one because, as Rachel was saying, there's a lot of stuff in the Maggie's catalog. And fortunately, at least with Maggie's, they didn't require so many minimums per SKU or per type of unit, which is good. They just kind of had a minimum, like you have to, I can't remember the amount, but purchase X amount, and it can be from a variety of different styles and sizes, but you have to purchase X amount. So I spent a lot of time making an order form that, kind of gave our members access to choosing all of these different products. But that was definitely a lot of work. And I think something we would be willing to do again in the future, maybe just putting a few parameters to kind of make it easier for us. There were certainly socks that were more popular. So I think there's ways to kind of even look through a vendor's catalog and be like, some of these are going to be more popular anyway, so we can focus the members' interest there. But this was a really great one, and one that we've talked about wanting to replicate again, potentially this year in the winter time. So that was a great one that I personally enjoyed a lot. I still have some of the socks I wear from it, because they have men's items. So let's look. Rachel, you want to talk about Equal Exchange?
Yeah, so this past summer, when we were earlier on in lockdown, we partnered with Equal Exchange to do a tea and coffee buying club. And earlier I was mentioning that, the need to be flexible depending on a business's product availability. And a good example of this is that we originally, in addition to tea and coffee, had olive oil for folks that they could select, but then it ended up selling out before we were able to place our order. So we had to go back and notify folks, but I think for the most part, there was not a problem with that. And then once again, we were kind of close to some of the minimums, and specifically for like boxes of tea and coffee, we needed to do certain amounts to reach that minimum. And so we kind of went out to our core group to ask, and encourage folks to add on doing some personal outreach. So that really worked. And Equal Exchange also has a buying club program that they've kind of started, I think probably around the time of kind of when the lockdown started. So yeah, so they're really open and willing to help. So they're a great place to start, I would say. And they also don't require for you to be a specific business. You can go on and just directly purchase on their website. And maybe Billy, do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that nuance, but some products, depending on which state you live in, this is going to vary all across the country, collect sales tax on items. So in those cases, when you're purchasing from them, they're going to want to make sure that you as an entity are able to remit the sales tax for those items. Fortunately, in Pennsylvania, food and clothing actually don't require sales tax. So I think that's one of the reasons why Equal Exchange was willing to sell to us. And I think it's going to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis with these vendors. And again, depends on your state, but generally food is like a safe one to go with because of that. Or there might be ways to work with the vendors too, where if you pay the tax up front to them and they remit it on your behalf, then you can also then just sell directly to your constituents and build in that tax price too. But so far, the vendors we have worked with recently haven't asked us about needing to remit tax, again, because we've been dealing more with like food and things. So it just hasn't been something that's come up, but we can talk about that more. I do think it's also worth saying here, Frankie Pondoloff from Equal Exchange is an active member with Fair Trade Philadelphia. So we've been able to kind of work with her closely on this, and obviously want to create a symbiotic relationship between Equal Exchange and Fair Trade Philadelphia. So it was nice to be able to initiate that, and one that we might consider doing again in the future.
Definitely. Great. And yeah, for this next one, so this was our last buying club. We were trying to work with 5 North Chocolate. Many of you know or have heard Ben Kennard speak, and 5 North Chocolate is delicious. So our friends at Media Fair Trade, they actually hosted a great event with him to talk about 5 North and his journey, and we thought it would be fun to do an order around that time, especially since we have some members of ours who are vegan, and the chocolate is plant-based. But actually, due to the popularity of the event, there was actually a lot of limited product availability. So this is kind of an example of one where we went out with the forum, gathered the information, started working on that, and had to postpone. And we're hoping to do this hopefully later this year would be great, but we'll see on that one. So
yeah. But yeah, important to highlight that, this is the kind of thing that happens sometimes too. And, hopefully you have a relationship with your members where they're not getting angry with you if you come back and say, we don't have any of the products that we're trying to work with. But generally, I think that's the community atmosphere that we're, most of our what do you call it, campaigns are kind of working with. So I think hopefully that'll extend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for this last one that we'll talk about is Burlap Barrel. So we did this in the fall, and we hosted a virtual event with one of the founders, Ethan, where we heard about their business operations, farmer partnerships, and learned about the spices that they carry. And then we did the buying club order after that. It was also around the holiday season. And so for this one, the delivery times and getting the products to participants was even more important than normal, because I believe a number of people were giving them as gifts around the holidays. So we wanted to make sure that the timing would work. But this is a great example of like a combination event and buying club. And we're looking at hopefully doing more of those too. And we've done some in the past as well, as Billy mentioned. And this one in particular was interesting because it drew in a lot of folks that were interested in spices, and then kind of also got to talk about fair trade. So I feel like we had some folks participate that hadn't ever participated before, which was really nice. And just one other thing that I wanted to note on this, you may ask like how we select the products. And for example, with this one, we worked with Ethan, and he suggested on their website, you can kind of sort by popularity. So we picked, I think, just like the 6 most popular items, something like that.
I think it was the top 10 most popular.
Oh, maybe it was 10.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
And Rachel, I'd want to echo that too. I think this was a really successful buying club for us too, because as you said, there were people that lurk on our social media or our newsletter who haven't come to events before, who showed up and just purchased some products. And these are, I think, exactly the type of people we want to be targeting, who might not necessarily care about showing up and being active, but being able to expose them to just a product and familiarizing them and making it easy for them to purchase, I think is I think that was a real testament to the success of this buying club, being a relatively unknown brand, reaching new people, and just kind of win-win again for everyone. So yeah, it was great. And I think also the largest in terms of participants to date, with I think 20 plus or so. So that was great. Yeah.
Great. And before we go to Q&A, I did want to mention that you're welcome to reach out to us directly with any questions about this. And if we don't get to them today, but I know we will have time to go through some. And Billy and I were also talking about the possibility of hosting another event at another time, if like a working session, if folks want to get together to kind of brainstorm best practices, things like that. And lastly, we've added our social media handles and our emails here. So if your campaigns do end up doing buying clubs and you want a little extra promotion, please feel free to tag us and or let us know via email, and we can kind of help promote what you all are doing.
Well, thank you. And of course, join Slack. We do a lot of our organizing on Slack. So if you want to see the types of conversations that are happening, we have a buying club channel and you can kind of see firsthand like how we as a group organize these things. So yeah, I'll leave it at that and let's start talking about it.
So we have a couple questions in the chat. First was from Joan, who wants to know more about your members, who they are, how you find them, do they pay dues, etc.
So our members don't pay dues. It's just a community where we try to reach out to like-minded activists and consumers who are sympathetic and interested to the ideals and values of the fair trade movement. And we try to foster and create programming throughout the year that appeals to that. And then of course, the buying club being one of those things. So I would say it's kind of a grassroots process. Yoko has reached out to, through her networks. We've tried to do some things at Orient and trying to get people more in our millennial generation to participate too. So it really is just kind of a grassroots process in that regard. Rachel, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think I would kind of categorize our members in two ways. And Billy's right, we don't have, at this point, no one is paying dues, but we have those kind of individual members that he mentioned. And then also we have a number of local businesses that we partner with for different events and things like that too. So that also kind of makes up our membership as well. And a lot of them are just, folks that work for those businesses who are really involved in fair trade and sometimes participate in the buying club as well. Yeah. And it looks like Kelly raised her hand.
Sorry, thank you. I'm not picture worthy, so I'm not going to turn on my video if that's okay. I'm not a member. I have no clue where I found this that I logged into today, but I am doing my MBA at Seton Hill University, which is a regional university outside of Pittsburgh. I've lived internationally until the beginning of the pandemic. I'm back in the country, kind of restructuring life. So I'm working on this project and want to know your thoughts on it from the opposite perspective. What if, for instance, I'm working with an organization in Guatemala, fair trade organization, an organization approaching a fair trade Philadelphia and saying, we have this product, would you do a buying club for us? We will present, we'll have an education session. Do you think that's something that interests people to go from the opposite perspective instead of you reaching out to a product, the product reaching out to you?
I mean, I think yes, and I think the nods you see around the room here hopefully kind of also would also suggest that. And just even recently, one of our former members, Ritu, who actually has her own fair trade business, Namaste NYC, she's similarly tried to engage us to create a buying club to support her business and her brand. And I think really even like long-term, I think this is kind of the direction that will hopefully really help sustain some of these types of organizations we're reaching out to so that we can kind of make sure that there is consumers ready for these products and really, bridge that so there's not production for going places that we don't know that there aren't going to be consumers for. So I think your work in that regard is good. And yes, please start reaching out to us and others, and we'll continue trying to build up our consumer base to support that.
Yeah, you can't see me shaking my head, but yes, it is, I'm hoping to start traveling again in September, and that's the goal. I've been talking to some people for 1.5 years now and helping them remotely, and I want to help them get their products into the States because they're organizations I believe in. And this is more to do with me just helping than anything. So I want to know if there is an avenue, and Billy, it sounds like there is. So expect to hear from me just as a personal aside to kind of see how I can get more involved with the fair trade community just for myself as well. Thank you. I didn't mean to be so long-winded there. Thank you.
No problem. Great. It looks like we have a few other questions too. Paige, you raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. I thought this was so interesting because I feel like there's so many people out there who want to buy ethically sourced products, but they're just not accessible, whether it's financially or physically, or they don't see them that much in stores. So I think this is a great idea. And I was wondering, about when you did ship stuff through the postal service. Was that a big challenge? Was that difficult to do? And how did you go about that?
I do think that it was kind of a big lift. We had a few volunteers, I believe, who helped with that. But yeah, we tried to really encourage people to only do it if they needed that, so that since it is all volunteer based. But yeah, Billy, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, you know, finding, again, I don't know the nature of your campaign, but finding people to volunteer to just pack boxes and stuff, that's tough. And if you want to build in your own margins to even just compensate the person's labor to do that, that's something that you can consider doing. For us, the easiest thing is really, or for anyone, is if you have a centralized event or place that people can pick up. My house that you see here has served as one of the centralized locations, and that makes it quite easy because I'm working from home all the time. I have no problem with people coming by to just pick up whenever they need. So really, there's low effort when it comes to distribution in that regard. Now that things are opening up again, certainly having our general body meetings or parties and gatherings serve as that is another great way, because you can put the onus on the participant to say, hey, got all the products here at the buying club, show up to the event. If you miss the event, you know, it's on you to like come to my house or go to Rachel's house to go pick it up on your own time. And, you know, that's like people going to a store to do their own shopping and things. So it happens. But I would say, if you are going to do the postal service, be prepared for the labor that goes into packing and shipping boxes and sending it. And if you want to charge your members above just the postal rate just for your labor, that's fine. And some members are certainly even willing to do that too. Like, I think we had someone that was going to participate from Puerto Rico at one point, and he was like, you know, I'll pay for it because how else am I going to get these spices, you know, to Puerto Rico? So there might be members that are willing to pay regardless.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and it looks like Jane, you have a question?
Yes, I'm curious, Kelly McVeigh, as to what the co-op is that you have the relationship with.
The one in Guatemala,
Yes.
it's called Trauma Textiles. It's in a town called, it's a really long name, but the abbreviation is XCLA, which I say is Zella. And it's a group of women, mostly women, about 400 women in the mountains of Guatemala that weave anything from masks to stuffed animals to clothes to, so I've just been doing some pro bono business consulting with them and helping them see if they can get their products into the States until I can get to Guatemala.
Can you put their website in the chat?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great, and it looks like Andrea, we have a question from you as well.
Hi, I'm driving, so I'm being safe. Hello, thank you for this presentation and offering all of your knowledge and intellectual property to us fellow fair traders. Appreciate it. I have a few questions. One is the same that Shelly asked in the chat. How frequently do you do this? My other question is, what's your methodology for your margin? I actually have 4 questions. The third question is, have you thought about doing like repeat products per month? And fourth, is there a software that you're dreaming of or researching that could help make it easier? We're talking, this reminds me a lot of the CSA that I get in their order form. I can just imagine that really probably takes a lot of time in doing this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so we've done it, what would you say, like a few times a year, 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, I'd say we've done about 8 to 10 rounds total at this point over the years. So that roughly works out to, yeah, a couple times a year, seasons, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if we kind of developed a more frequent schedule and offering of this, I think we would need some software and different things to help us with that. So yeah, I haven't come across any in particular. The way that we've been operating has worked fairly well, but as we mentioned, we're not doing them super frequently. And then Also, we have thought about doing the same products again because some of them have been really popular, like the Maggie's socks, and you know, I think we might do equal exchange again because that was very popular, and the spices too probably we'd consider. So yeah, and
We have done marketplace a couple times already, so that has like that we actually have had repeat already. Yeah.
And I think, was there a fourth question that we missed?
Margins.
Oh yes. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah. So yes, the magic in margins is really, the interesting point, because you want to make it worthwhile for the organization. You also want to make it worthwhile for the members. So when they're receiving a discount. So this is really good when it comes to high margin items like clothes. So there's a lot more to be saved for the consumer or the participant when you put a 10 or 20% discount on, $50, $100 clothing articles that might come from marketplace. So certainly, like when we were working with people and they were buying 2 or 3 items each, that starts turning into $30 to $50 of savings, which is substantial. For food, it gets a little bit tougher because the margins are smaller, and people might go, if I'm only saving $2 or $3, is this worth it? So got to try and figure out where that sweet spot balance is. And we have done, I think maybe at one point we did a buying club where we didn't keep any margin, and we just said we want the consumers to just keep the whole savings, and we'll make it as easy for us as possible. I think that was maybe equal exchange.
Yeah, the equal exchange one, we did that. Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, we didn't go around sending it, we didn't do postal service. It was like, go pick it up from Rachel, and it's on you. And for that, it was we just had to order one centralized thing, have it go to Rachel's house, and people could go pick it up as they needed. So I think the margins really have to, you calculate it based on, the amount that your organization wants to earn from doing it. And yeah. I also do want to comment on the software piece, because I think that is really an interesting part. And there are a lot of, just like our fair trade community, there's a lot of open source software developers and people that develop software for organizations that are doing good things. So it is my hope in the future that if we could continue to scale and do this more frequently, we could approach some of these people and say, hey, we have this system, you could help us develop some software to help it. And we could, have it for a lot of different kind of buying club communities. I think that would be really great, but we don't do it enough to really justify that effort yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Catherine. Hello.
Hi. So I love this so much. I'm really excited. We definitely want to do it. I really appreciate your transparency, of course. So I know you said with the spices, like it was around the holidays. Have you done any other ones around specific things? Like I was just thinking it would be really cool maybe to try one around for like a Mother's Day. Like, I don't know. Have you tried that with any other kind of specific?
I think we did a marketplace around Mother's Day. Definitely, yeah. I think we did that in the spring at one point.
We had talked about trying to do for 5 North Chocolate, the event was around Valentine's Day. So but kind of we started too late. So yeah, I think that's one of the challenges, is really identifying that early. And each of the businesses too, I feel like have different timelines for, when you would receive the product and all of that. So just factoring that in.
Yeah.
Great.
Jane? Is that a lingering hand or still a new question from Jane?
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down.
No
Sorry
problem.
about that. I left a question for Kelly again in the chat.
Okay. I mean, well, if there's no other questions, we'd love to crowdsource some things and just hear from you all, and what kinds of things your members are interested in, or what kinds of ideas you think you'd have for us, or things that you think we could be doing to help improve on this. I will tell you, yeah, one of the difficulties we have is, obviously trying to meet that threshold. And yeah, so yeah, love to hear other feedback and thoughts from anyone here. Shelley?
I guess this actually is a question, and I apologize if I missed you saying this, and I'm guessing it's different for different products, but just to help get an idea, if we're looking to do this in Chicago, on what were some of the minimums, or like what were the average number of people? Did that vary a lot by product, and just us helping to know the scope of knowing like the minimum number of people usually needed involved each time?
Well, I think Marketplace was in the several hundreds of dollars, maybe 300 or 500 minimum. So I can't remember exactly, and that's at wholesale price. So it's not just the retail price. You're paying that at wholesale. So it really depends. I mean, that one, I think we had like 12 or 13 women participate in, and really it just takes one really enterprising person to want to buy it, and you can hit that margin with, if everyone else is just getting one item. So it's really, really dependent on things. What are some of the other minimums we've had? I can't remember what it was for Ethan with the spices. I'm like blanking.
It's not dollar. I'm thinking like number of people. Like, did it vary a lot? Like this one was only 6, or this one we needed like 100 people.
Oh, again, it's ranged from 6 to a dozen plus. I think that's kind of our sweet spot. But then again, recently with the spices, it's, we had 20 or so people, but totally dependent on how much each participant is purchasing and that kind of thing too. So it's really, I really wouldn't go by individual, or like number of individuals. You got to get the minimums and then go, because even if you and 4 of your friends said, oh, we really want to buy a lot of clothes, you could hit those minimums and just do all your shopping from one brand and do it. So it really just depends.
Yeah, and I think with Equal Exchange, I'm looking now, their coffee comes in cases of 6, and I think the tea was the same, if I'm remembering. So, you could do, 6 people and just get 1 case and have that be it, but or split it up between 2 people. So yeah, they could be really small as well, I know, but it depends on the organization for sure, and those different minimums.
Joan?
Yeah, this has been really, really great. Hopefully you can hear me okay. This has been really helpful. And we have a fare package that for $15 a month, you get just a surprise thing in the mail. And it's been popular. It's just well done. And Alicia's just done a great job with it. But that's kind of just the reverse. People are just willing to get one thing. Oh, they can buy more than one, but get a surprise. And if they don't want it, they can pass it on. But I'm curious about your members, and that comment just a minute ago about how many people. And do you find most of them are individuals just buying a quantity for their own use? Are any of them actual businesses that are buying from you?
Certainly not businesses, but I think it is individuals for their own use or to give as a gift. Sometimes when myself, Yoko, we participate, we'll buy a little extra to have for ourselves and give as gifts to others, which I think is nice too. But Joan, I'll go back to that example I gave at the beginning where at one point Yoko reached out to her like hula class or her hula group. And like, again, I think that if you can find groups that have existing like identities together, or they're already doing something together, it really makes it easy, because that group, you can kind of talk and you can all share and everyone can get it at the same time, and it makes the distribution easy. So I would, if you're looking for places to start, if you already have network connections to those types of pre-existing groups, that's a great way to start and to go about doing it. So same could go for like student groups. I can't remember who was the St. Joe student here, but if you can find like a student group where everyone needs to get some food or something like that, or chocolate, that's another great way to do it. And to reach out, I should say, to other existing student groups. It doesn't have to be the fair trade group. It can be the frat house, it can be the sorority group, that kind of thing, wherever there's like that pre-existing network.
And one thing we were looking at as well with the 5 North chocolate one that ended up not happening was we were thinking about partnering with Media Fair Trade, which is close by to us. And we were going to have essentially centralized order and the bulk order. And then we were going to have 2 like volunteers, one in Philly and one in Media that was going to have a pickup too. So that's another idea as well, is maybe partnering with another campaign that's close by.
Yeah.
Great.
We should do that more too. And just thinking aloud, Rachel, of seeing there's a Fair Trade St. Joe's person, like these are exactly the kind of connections we should be making to facilitate it.
Catherine, were you raising your hand?
Yeah, my raise hand button isn't there. So I'm like, okay, does that work? Yeah. So do you guys figure, well, you must have to, you figure out the margin, you figure out what you're going to offer the product at before you do it, right? You have to.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to tell the consumer what they're going to be paying, what their rate is going to be. Yep.
Right. And do you collect the money up front, or do you wait until you hit the threshold and then collect the money? Correct. The latter. And some people might slip off between. Okay, that's what you're saying. Okay, about losing people. Okay. Okay. Because I'm wondering if you could just be like, pay, and then if we don't, we return it. But that's gonna, anyhow. Just thinking out loud here. And you and like, and it was interesting to hear you. And Shelley also, I was thinking that with the number of people, it's like spices are cheap. I mean, even if, except saffron, right? But spices, compared to marketplace where you've got $100, I mean, it's really easy to hit their minimum with just a handful of items. But spices could be more. But do you ever do like, you need to order at least 3 items or something like that with your buyers?
Yep.
Minimum amounts?
Okay. Yeah, we've also talked about doing kind of like what Joan was saying, like we thought with the spices, if we weren't going to hit the minimums, maybe we'd do like these packages of spices where we just order like 3 and everyone gets 3 and people could sign up to have, if they were interested in that too. So that's maybe another option.
And the kind, and yeah, well, sorry, I'm good. But what kind of, I mean, that's interesting to me to hear you say too, sometimes that, yeah, if it's only 20% or if it's a higher price item, but we're thinking that this could be a really great way for us in Chicago Fair Trade to be a benefit of membership. Because right now we're having an individual membership drive and we've always gone back and forth on like, we like to do almost all our events are free, right? So it's like, what kind of discount can you offer a member? But to me, this would be like, you do 20% to the general public and 30% if you're a member or something, like, I don't know. But later on, I'd love to dig more and ask you like what kinds of margins, because I would have imagined they'd have to be kind of bigger margins of discounts, but I'm glad you're saying they don't. I mean,
we have similar aspirations if we ever get members too, because I think that would be something we'd love to extend. But, one of the other things too is as you get bulkier orders, you can even get lower wholesale prices. So it's kind of all about that magic too. Andrea has a question.
Hey, my question, I can't remember if you said this at the beginning. Do you send a survey to all of your community asking them which ones they would be interested in after you already do the research? Do you ever give people the opportunity, hey, if you could organize this minimum, we could do a buying club for you? Does the demand come from consumers, or give them an opportunity to lead the way for what you're offering in the buying club?
So I think that's the interesting dance that happens, and we have our Slack channel, but like that is really like what you just touched on, is the symbiosis of listening to the pulse of the group, influencing the pulse of the group too, and kind of creating that kind of nexus to say, let's do it. And that really just happens with the art of conversation, or hearing people go like, oh, heard about this product, or, oh, I'm really interested in this, and kind of being like, oh, well, maybe this member should be like, if you thought about that. And really, I think that's literally what all we do as our campaigns is try to like foment that kind of conversation, and then like see what kind of emerges and say, hey, let's try it. And again, as Rachel was saying, like, this has been a long kind of trial and error process. You're going to have instances where it doesn't bite, or you don't get the minimum, and that's totally okay. And I think you want to be able to have that kind of relationship with your members or your participants to recognize, like, we're kind of all in this together. Doesn't happen, thanks for taking the time to fill out the order form. Sucks, and let's see if we can rally some people in 6 months again, because we'll keep building on the interest in in these different products and stuff.
Luckily, fair traders are so nice. My next question is about the Slack channel, because at Chicago Fair Trade, communication and through email and things like that sometimes can get laborious. With your Slack channel, do you allow anybody who wants to tune into your Slack channel participate, or how do you even spread the word, and who's on your Slack channel and who's staffing your Slack channel for the Buyers Club?
Billy is the mastermind behind our Slack channel, which has been really great. And yeah, and really anyone can join, and we put it out in our newsletter and invite folks to join. And if any of you guys want to join to see, like Billy had mentioned earlier, to see how we use it, we do have some private channels. I think maybe just one.
Just one, but
yeah.
But the spirit really is to have radical transparency, so that the conversations and the threads that are happening, theoretically anyone could go in and view, and that's just, again, part of the way we want to try and keep working, because it helps facilitate things to happen in a kind of collective, self-organized kind of way. So the Buying Club channel, like, we'll talk about the things there, and I can't even think about all the things we've talked about in it, but join the Slack and you can literally scroll through and just see the record of everything we've talked about as it relates to these different topics and that kind of thing.
I wonder if it would be worth pulling up the Slack just to give people
just to do a screen share for it.
A quick tour. And then I think someone had mentioned that, Catherine, in the chat, but yeah, we could dive into it more another time, but just to give you guys a quick sense.
Yeah. So here's that member Ritu I was telling you about. She came in literally and was talking about some of the Buying Club things she wanted to do with her business. Just lots of conversation. What else have we, let's see. So here's, you can see the order form when we're planning these order forms. What else here? Here we're talking about different actual units and the prices for the boxes and how much we need to get each box. Here's some members, that are just participating. So really it is a very like, ad hoc process, but just in general, I think the Slack platform is superior to using email, because the conversations are here and they're all related to different topics. So here's all of our Buying Club related topics. Here's our news and politics stuff when we just want to share just things that are happening in current events. For temporary things, we have these we use the year to preface, and I should be archiving these channels because they'll go away after the event happens. I haven't archived them, but this is a great platform, and I'm pretty sure it's free, or we haven't been paying for it. So it's free for us, at least still. I guess if you get enough users, it might cost more money. And it's a great platform to use, and we've been using it since 2016. And Yoko was a resistant person at first, but now has come around to see it. And I think it's a great transparent organizing platform, and we're getting slowly more and more people to join it.
And Holly mentioned in the chat too that Fair Trade Campaigns has Slack as well. So if you guys aren't on that, you should join that as well.
Yeah.
I think we're a little over, but this is a good, people are into it. This is good. You guys are, this is really inspiring. Do you guys use it too for like social media? Do you encourage people who do it to post and tag, or have any templates for them or anything like that?
It's not the same because you don't really broadcast to your network like social media does, but I think it is.
No, I'm sorry. Moving beyond Slack. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I jump around. My brain doesn't go very linear. But just in terms of the buying club, like
Okay.
this 10 people that buy, do they then go on, or do you encourage them to go on and post and tag and all that stuff? And do they do it?
I think we have encouraged people to do it, and I don't
Haven't yet.
think we've had a lot of takers,
Yeah.
Okay.
but a few, right?
Okay.
Personally, I am not a big poster on social media, so I think this is something that like we should inculcate more in the group. But like, I personally don't. I like talking in Slack with our community, but I don't tend to even promote our fair trade stuff through my own personal social media. We use the formal channels to promote on, but I think we should probably be encouraging more of our members. And actually, one of the ideas we had was to do, like the influencers are into like unpackaging products and that kind of thing. So we wanted to try and do that now with some of these products to also hype up and get more of the people to participate in the buying clubs, because then we can get like, hey, here's a cool product, and then let's do a buying club afterwards to again build in and feed into that interest. Yeah.
Great. And I think Jane had mentioned in the chat how to join Slack. So for the Fair Trade Campaigns one, Holly put a link in the chat. So I think what you would have to do is go there and then create an account to join. And same with Fair Trade Philadelphia. So I wonder, do you have that? Oh, I could actually put a link in the chat.
It's on our Get Involved page now, fortunately.
Yeah, that's true. And I can just grab it from Slack, I believe.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the chat as well.
Yoko, you have been silent. Do you have anything you want to say with respect to all this?
I was so happy listening to you too and everyone else. One thing, as we all know, it's relationship, right? So it's working well because of the relationship. And for Buying Club, I was so happy when we didn't really get to one time threshold, but then since we have a good relationship with Spice Guy, right? And it's not like, okay, 10, not 10, no, but it's, they help you. So time and time again, I think that's what we are finding ourselves so lucky. And I'm glad I got to meet you today.
Yeah, that's a good point to highlight, Yoko. Yeah, because when we were doing the spices, we didn't reach the case threshold for some of the spices, but Ethan was just like, yeah, we want to support you. I want to get my spices out to the market. So he made it work with us, and we did have a lot, so it was good. But yeah.
And that reminds me that we actually had tried, because this was the second or third event we've done with Ethan, and I think we had tried to do it one other time, and we didn't get enough interest. And I think that was because we gave everyone the option for all of the spices, and I think then we didn't hit minimums for any of them almost. So kind of round two was more successful, honing in on some of the spices and then working with them too. And it was nice that, he knew we had wanted to support the business. And so, yeah, the relationships are really important, as Yoko said.
Cool. Before we jump, if anyone wants to put on their camera, I was just going to take like a screenshot because we want to go back and tell our members we did a little workshop. So it'd be great to just have people's faces if they want. So ready, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
Great. And I had a question for Joan, actually, if you don't mind. I was curious about, you had mentioned your monthly, I guess, fair trade box item. And so that sounds really interesting. I remember when you guys first launched it, I sent it to our team and I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I'd love to hear more. Is it the same product to everyone, or is it kind of different products, and how many people do you have signed up for?
Yeah, I think when we did it at our height, we had probably 50, but this was a couple years ago and we had to change our website. So that was kind of enough impetus for a few people to say, okay, rather than cancel, I just wrote re-enlist because they had to re-up to get the package. I think we have about 30 now, which we'd love to have more, but you know, it's also a lot of time to put that together. Alicia does a great job. Yeah, she just finds different products. This last time it was the Women's Project. They have like a bean soup, and then actually a box of cornbread. And it was beautifully wrapped together, and they actually donated it to us so we could afford the postage because it's not light. But yeah, she just every month it's just something different. It could be chocolate, it could be, you know, a gift item, it could be, you know, whatever. And it really is fun, and people enjoy getting it. And you can do it one time, you can do it monthly, you can do a couple, and it's just a nice way for us to make a little, you know, Alicia comes from a business background and always thinking, how do we make a little money for Fair Trade LA and cover expenses of things we want to do? And it's hardly a big money maker, but it's something. And it also, as you're saying with your club, it gets products in front of people. And if we get it from somewhere else, it'll say where it came from, so they can go on the website and find more. So it's been fun. Thanks.
Well, and it's a great way for you to support your business members too. No, I mean,
Yes.
because you know,
Yeah.
my only a little concern in Chicago, just because we have about 50 business members, I'm like, oh, who do you pick? But it's also, I'm thinking sometimes too, I mean, you got to do gender, you know, I mean, you got to, you know, sometimes food stuff, sometimes socks, you know, I mean, you got to figure it out. But I'm also thinking it would be a good way that maybe some people that are thinking of joining, and then if you use as business members, and I'd be like, well, if you join, we could maybe feature,
Yes.
you know.
Good point. Yeah, exactly.
Great.
We learn so much, and there's so much to think about.
And so then so much to do.
Us too. This has been really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think since we're over, maybe if there aren't any more questions, we'll call it for the day. I know it's later on the East Coast than it is for me out here.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for
Really
joining.
appreciate it.